So good morning, everyone. Lovely to see faces from yesterday and new faces for today. So I'm joining again today from where I live on unceded Cadigal Wongal land, overlooking Cooks River, the Gulayari. I want to pay my respects to elders past and present and to all First Nations people joining us. As I said, it's a great pleasure to welcome you all here again today. We had a really wonderful day, half day yesterday with Liz's brilliant keynote, beautiful, brilliant papers, the real excitement I could feel from people getting to talk in this really sustained way about such an important writer and the wonderful work that Michelle has offered us, given us as a present, as Liz so eloquently spoke yesterday. And so many issues are arising from that. And in that context, it is such a profound pleasure, professionally, personally, to welcome the writers that we have here reading this morning. I'm very sad that Paula is unable to make it. She's unwell. She's very sad. She said in her text, she's so sad to be missing reading with the best people in the world. So, you know, those of you who know her know, you know, what an accolade that is, what an honour. So we miss Paula, but you know, we'll still have a wonderful session. So I will introduce each of the writers in turn. We'll begin, if that's okay, with Ellen, then Evelyn, then Roanna, then Craig, and finish with Fiona, who's joining us from the west coast of America and then dashing off to another wonderful panel that she's organised afterwards. No rest for the talented. So first of all, such a profound pleasure to welcome back Ellen van Neerven, who read so beautifully at the Antigone Kefala conference that Liz and I organised some years back. Some of the rest of you were here. So moving and inspiring. Ellen is an award-winning writer and editor of Mananjali and Dutch heritage. Their books include Heat and Light, which I have been teaching for the last few years with profound pleasure. I think it's my students' favourite book on the Australian literature course. And yeah, such excitement every year. So that's a real privilege. Also Comfort Food and Throat, and their latest book is Personal Score, which I'm looking forward to reading. Ellen, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Jingari. It's my cultural obligation to acknowledge I'm on Turrbal land and pay my respects to Turrbal people. Thank you for having me. It's wonderful to see so many familiar faces. And it's a real honour to be on this writers panel this morning. What to say about Michelle? Not only an exceptional writer, but an exceptional person. So in 2013, a decade ago now, can you believe it? Michelle's Questions of Travel received the Miles Franklin Award, the ALS Gold Medal, and the Prime Minister's Award. In that same time frame, I was finishing the first draft of what would be my first book, Heat and Light. And there was a particular moment I was overwhelmed with admiration and respect for Michelle and her social justice commitment through her words and her strong call to action to the PM when receiving that PM award. Personally, it made me feel something about the impact fiction could make in so-called Australia, and does make. It gave me courage, it gave me light, it gave me urgency, and it made me want to be a fiction writer. A few years after writing Heat and Light, I also took up writing poetry, and I wanted to write a small suite of 3 poems that spoke to the energy I felt about questions of travel and how so much of this particular novel has stayed with me in my own persistent questions of travel. So these 3 poems were published in Throat 2020. And that's what I've chosen to read today. Okay. Questions of travel. When we travel, we become feral, aggressors of change, threats to the balance of the native environment. Try to limit ourselves to minimal movements and quiet words. When we travel, we become feral. We allow ourselves extra sleep, meals, and drink. Shirts wrinkle in backpacks, sunburned shadows our face. Insects dimple our arms. We walk with a cultural limp. Questions of love. In another country, my appearance allows queers to feel comfortable to speak to me openly about what is not open in their country. Some have been closeted for decades, fearing rejection from family, loss of employment, and violence. They adopt complicated codes of secrecy. I feel honored to be in these conversations, to have them over fish and coffee. We speak about gender before colonization. We speak about love before colonization. Remembering, forgetting, knowing, needing. We are bleeding from the same temple, sharing the same ocean. Questions of home. Will you take my Aboriginal passport on arrival? Will you take my tears as proof of identity? I have nothing good to say about my country on this plane. I brace myself so much on arrival. I forget to breathe. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Evelyn. Absolutely wonderful. And breathe. Just, yeah, very beautiful. Thank you so much. Such a perfect beginning to the panel, to the day, and a grounding that in poetry that I'm so grateful for. Thank you. Now to Evelyn. Evelyn Araluen, and again, an enormous pleasure to welcome Evelyn back to UNSW. She's taught for us. She also read beautifully, movingly for Auntie Antigone Kefala those few years ago, and beautifully launched the book from the conference that Liz and I had edited. So we're multiply grateful to Evelyn for her gracing us, and it is always very graceful, gracing us with her poetic presence. Evelyn is a poet, a researcher. She's also the co-editor of Overland, such an important, one of the really important little magazines, literary journals published in this country. She has won the Nakata Brophy Prize for Young Indigenous Writers, the Judith Wright Poetry Prize, a Wheeler Centre Next Chapter Fellowship, and a Neilma Sydney Literary Travel Fund. Last year, she won the Stella Prize for her stunning work, Drop Bear. She was born and raised on Darug country and is a descendant of the Bundjalung Nation. Huge pleasure. Thank you for joining us. Please, thank you, Evelyn.
Thank you, Ella. Hello, very honoured to be here. Today I'm on Wurundjeri country in Naarm, which is not my home, but it's a place that I'm very honoured to be able to be a guest of, and to be living in Kulin lands is a wonderful thing for me. And I just want to pay my respects to their Kulin's ongoing custodianship in care for country. They are the ongoing custodians and their sovereignty has never been ceded. And also want to extend that respect to anyone joining us from traditional lands of First Peoples today, and also extend that further to Ellen, to Turrbal country, and and to, your beautiful words before. I adore Throat, and hearing you read from Throat is lovely. I don't know how to step into the reading at this stage. It's normally at a live thing, it's a little bit easier to slip into that space. Like Ellen, I adore Michelle Kretser's work and have read her work at various stages of my own writing. I've read it as a student, and it's a strange experience to have admiration for someone who really just has so much skill and style and expertise in the form, who is also just an incredibly lovely person at real life events and such. We've been very blessed, I think, by Michelle as a person and also as a writer in this community. And so it's a real honor to be able to be here reading as part of that. I'm going to read two things. One I've kind of specifically written, which means it's a little bit rough, but it's sort of a response to a description from the life to come. I'm just going to read from that, if I can find it. This is why I should highlight my books. I'll read from the screen. The spare chairs looked on like witnesses. Cassie should have made a move to take the saucepan away, to make a fresh, odourless bowl of rice. She did neither of those things, but after a while began helping herself to curries. She couldn't help it. She was hungry. She scooped food into her mouth with her eyes lowered over her plate. The tepid dal was particularly delicious. Ash looked on in wonder. His face said, "What is wrong with you Australians? You eat curries without rice, a barbarism. You fear being attacked by people you've killed. You stole their land for animals that you slaughter in their millions, where you don't leave them to die by the side of the road. Your shame-faced paddocks." But Ash couldn't go on, because another part of him wanted to uncurl in giggles. The candles and flowers, the stink, a dinner party gone wrong, the first world definition of a tragedy. And this is my thus untitled response. As I am typing this scene, I've read in places I no longer visit. My foot balances the corner of the page flat so the candle gives enough light for me to read. For this, I feel guilt, for the angle of my leg, which will cause my hips to ache in the night. So I will wake and think again of the email I never sent, which sits like a bruise against my rib, my dog slowly expanding with each breath beside me. I could go to yoga class with the beautiful woman who once held her hand to my diaphragm, counting the breaths I expanded with, although we had known each other only mere moments in the humid air of a garage built on unceded lands we were both guest to. If I went to yoga class with the beautiful woman, perhaps I could angle my leg this way without the pain that wakes me and causes me to think of unsent emails. But I did not go to yoga. I did not leave my house. I did not travel. I sat reading with my spine at wrong angles, my shoulders in wrong curvature, candles lit as if this were that 3-day blackout sometime long ago in my parents' house, which I remember every time I light a match. I remember this scene every time I make curry, every time I pass carrion in the ditch on my drive home. I think of how the greedy prey on the weak, but I think also of how the hungry eat on the margins. If I am still hungry, it isn't in the way I remember, not for sensation, but for the break in memory, the distance from everything before the dark. That Australians would eat stolen spices and animals slaughtered in their millions on stolen paddocks is no surprise, is no gap in the narrative of any of our memories. It's nothing other than what they were taught. Aboriginal English has a long memory. It keeps alive old convict words which have faded from or been reinvented in modern Australian parlance. Words like gammon, a distraction, a card trick, a spectacle palliating theft, to shamefaced a paddock and extract its life, to poison an aquifer with fracked coal seam gas which would have watered the alluvial soil of generations to come. Like the spectacle of a nation carried on the merino's back over dirt cracked with clay and sown with nitrogen by the heavy hooves of beings never meant for this country, heaped now in their rotting hordes the way our rivers heave with rotting fish. Cultures are fundamentally experiences of time, says their philosopher Paul Ricoeur. Our one new philosopher and elder Alexis Wright says all times are important here and no time has truly ended, which is a way of saying that this country's story is a memory, but it is also a threat. It is a fire we all felt expanding with each breath as the carbonized ghosts of eucalyptus leaves rained down on us 3 years ago. It's a nightmare I wake from only with the aching of my hips, the story my parents told me in the long ago dark of the house, the echo of other times and the whisper of something out there in the wider dark when the dinner party ends and the uninvited guests finally leave. And I'm going to read from the only thing I've ever written about travel, because I haven't traveled very much. By choice and economy. This is called Breath. Jay plays the radio in the bathroom, so when the news reports the next death, it reverberates across tile and porcelain. They say the fires have grown strong enough to create their own weather systems, to draw down lightning from the smoke. They say they picked up a truck in a tornado of flame and tossed it down a mountain. Last year at the March for Kumanjayi Walker, my nation danced for rain outside Sydney Town Hall. An uncle told us the ancestors were angry, that they are reminding us what order looks like. Watching the land burn feels like a test of how much I'm willing to see avenged. I run the hotel bath and sit in more water than we're allowed at home, watch my hair swirl in dark tendrils around me. No one has ever asked, but I'm scared of the sea. Floating at dawn on the North Atlantic Ocean, I walk the length of the deck as the ferry sways beneath me. I wander as if drunk from lounge to shop to cafeteria. A few passengers are watching the TV absent-mindedly as the newsreader's accent clips unfamiliar over the names of towns I've walked barefoot, country I've danced and swum and sung. Here where I've slept in slips of morning light, there where we drove wide nights under a river of stars. She calls it a forest fire, and I watch as their mute faces are washed in orange glow. A man leans against the counter where I stand, and I want to say, that's my home and it's burning. Do you understand how much is alight that we can't breathe? I watch him watch expressionless before the story changes to the sport and his head tilts, his gaze involved. I've written poems about fire. I come from a culture of ancient knowledge of and relation with flame. We are each totemically designated through it. Our nations are demarcated by our fire stories, by what each terrain needs. It has a place in our body. On the land we pattern with old and new growth to bring that which forages and that which preys. It's our job to know when the wind lifts, when the trees are ready to sigh. There's something intoxicating about air filled with the smoke of burning red gum. Fire breathes and expels air. It knows what to take if you know what to give it. I don't know the fire here. It's something to curl around in some building where some old name once took tea. I feel panic rise through me as we pass the pub along the River Liffey, patrons crowding the roaring chimneys while swans honk along the bank. I imagine coal spilling down the cobbled street, the night wailing with sirens. When I check the Fires Near Me app, it opens unmarked somewhere in the British countryside. It's the same notification tone as Dad's emails. We meet cold mornings in homes evening to tallies of the day's carnage, cold fingers scrolling across continents to find our towns. In a group chat, my siblings back home list the roads that are closed each day, sharing screenshots of maps and alerts as if we weren't already always watching, as if by sharing news we already know we might be able to do something. It follows us wherever we go, on the radio in the chemist while I'm pondering over candied flavours of fruits that are burning on the branch, in the hotel lobby as we wait to sleep off 10,000 miles, the attendant at the Immigration Museum who hopes Ireland learns from our mistakes in their next election, the butcher who repeats horrible, 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 the baker who shakes her head for the koalas, the bartender who says that he's sorry as he pours me a cider that tastes like cordial warmed from a southern sun. I run out of synonyms for burning as I watch through a screen, hear my mum's voice strain through my headphones. Between Sydney, Qatar and Dublin, a clapstick stained with ochre dust goes missing from my luggage. It was carved from a mulga tree at the back of some distantly related uncle's property in Roanna, the ochre from veins at the edge of Darragh and Gundungara country that I gathered on a drive after last year's Hawkesbury NAIDOC. I'm hysterical at its loss. I never wanted to come. I never wanted to leave home. There are clearly ancestors who don't want me here. What if that tree is gone now? I wail in frantic emails to airport security. What if the fire took it too? No, end there. Thank you very much for having me, and congratulations on continuing to be so good at writing, Michelle.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Evelyn. Again, such a wonderful start. I feel like we can go on now. Fantastic. Roanna is next. Great pleasure to welcome my colleague, Roanna Gonsalves. She is the award-winning author of The Permanent Resident. Her 4-part radio series, On the Tip of a Billion Tongues, was commissioned and broadcast by RN's Earshot program, is a portrayal of contemporary India through its multilingual writers. She works here in the English and Creative Writing program as a lecturer in creative writing, where she's also a hugely valued and admired colleague. Welcome, Roanna, who will also be speaking at the conference later today, as well as reading in her multi-talented way. Thank you, Roanna.
Thank you, Brigitta. I'd like to acknowledge that I'm on Gadigal land, unceded Gadigal land. Pay my respects to elders past and present, and also to extend that respect to Ellen van Neerven and Evelyn Araluen Kaur, and any other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here with us today, or possibly listening in at another time. I feel really honored to participate in this writers panel. Michelle de Kretser, I mean, I'm presenting a paper at 2 p.m. As an homage to a writer with whom I feel a connection by right of admiration, as all of us do here, and as Michelle has said about Shirley Hazard. And Michelle has often talked about the importance of sentences. Literature lives in sentences, she said. I mean, even with poetry, which lives in lines, ultimately there are sentences that poetry also lives in. So I'm going to look at how literature lives in Michelle's sentences later on. But I'm going to read now from, sorry, I'm just kind of still in that mesmerized headspace of listening to Ellen read and Evelyn read, and I'm going to now take a minute to take a deep breath and then read from this short story called How to Work from Home. I will post the link in the chat if you would prefer to read on your own screens rather than listen, because this was published in Peril magazine online a little while ago during one of the lockdowns. But I will read now. How to work from home. First, establish a routine. The priests of productivity say that this will keep you sane. Break down your day into even rows and columns as the wattle spreads its light. Do not check your phone when it pings. But your suburban Sydney flat is in the flight path next to a train line. The world reels between a row of rubbish bins. Your phone pings repeatedly. It's either the landlord or the electricity company or the Cinder app. The app is full of men with daughters and vasectomies. You must focus on your son instead. It's time to wake him. He will begin to count the money in his piggy bank yet again. You want him to save up to go to Harvard. He's been saving up to buy a present for Father's Day, a present for his father who hasn't visited or called for 7 years. This morning, there is a letter, and you almost don't open it because it looks like a notice of termination from the electricity company. You have already overdrawn your credit card to pay the gas bill, to pay for tea leaves, for yogurt, for cumin seeds, for a 20-kilo bag of rice, cheaper at the Indian shop in Liverpool. You hope it is a notice of termination from the electricity company, anything but a confirmation of what was told to you over the phone last week. No action needed. You have spent many years wishing for this exact piece of information. You had hoped for this through the marriage, through its subterfuges, through its bruises from temporary truces. Years ago, it would have been a simple end to the problem, a fatal car crash, say, or a sudden heart attack, a totally acceptable liberation. You would nod at the mourners at the cemetery, a widow so young, they would say, after the burial. Now in your hands, this confirmation of his death is an explosive. You have what you have longed for, except it is no longer enough. Establish a routine. The priests of productivity insist that this is your son's path to Harvard. Turn off the video on all your Zoom meetings. Say this is because of a bandwidth issue. Multitask with online schooling. But that voice over the phone last week, you may have imagined it, you tell yourself. It was his sister's voice, a breaking voice, breaking news. She asked to talk to her nephew. In the background, a TV was saying, the numbers are looking much better, big progress being made. You told his sister that her nephew was in an online classroom and could not be disturbed. This letter you hold in your hands is as solid as an instinct. It confirms the phone conversation. It turns sound into a certificate. It turns breath into fact. Your hope for an untruth is now an irrevocable truth. You are fitful in the territory of memory. Whose numbers are these? You ask him before you pay the phone bill. He turns around, looks you in the eye and says, clients, colleagues, people begging for home loans, what do you think? So many this month? You're always imagining things. I wish you believed me more. The years roll ahead, then they roll backward. At some point, all that is left is debris from cruelty. His cruelty to you, your own part in it. $3,000 withdrawn from your joint account in 1 week. He says to you, you spend too much. In those early days when you still believed yourself, his words could surprise you. So you say, it is you who has withdrawn $3,000. It's a business expense, a business expense. You always think I'm lying. No wonder you have no friends. Your phone pings again. What God has put together, let no man put asunder. A radio voice says, we have met the moment and we have prevailed. The trains pester past your apartment like second thoughts. Throughout those years, you couldn't tell lie from fact, joke from sincerity, the provocative word from a plea for help. Just tell me the truth, you used to say to him, endless rows and columns of incantations for the same thing. I just want the truth. I am telling you the truth. You waver. You ask yourself if you are imagining things. Now the letter is here and you wish it were a lie. Ask the electricity company for another extension of the due date. It's your third such request this year. Return the 20-kilo bag of rice, the cumin seeds, the tea leaves, get a refund. That will give you some spare cash. In the clutch of your flat, hope the landlord will forget that the rent is due tomorrow. Light a match, hold it close to the letter. Let ashes return to ashes. But you are unable to let the flame catch. These men with daughters and vasectomies, they are aplenty in your suburb. They fix your car and pay for dinner and reassure you that they won't get you pregnant, as if that's the reason you insist on protection. The wattle is discolored. It does not do well when cut from the tree. Seethe for the last time over your old love. There is so much to say. It is cruel of him to pass before you could present a reckoning of profit and loss. Once it was the lies that burned you, now in this moment it is the truth. Here are the facts, you wish to say to him once and for all. Here is the irrefutable state of the marriage. Here is the cause, here is the consequence. I am not imagining things. But he is no more. He has scorched you with the sun. The aircrafts emerge from their hibernation. Minutes pass. There on the bed, wrapped up in a faded red sheet made in your homeland, your son is calm, holding the piggy bank in his afternoon arms. For a moment, you imagine him as a corpse. Then you are reassured as his chest rises and falls with evenly spaced breaths. You must wake him, this soul of your soul. Try to establish a routine now that you have turned off the video on all Zoom meetings. The priests of productivity say it's the only way to Harvard. But the letter, you tell yourself, but the reckoning, but forgiveness, you are unable to reach for it yet. Put the matches away. Let your son sleep. Once he wakes, there will be no more sleeping. And that's the end of the reading. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Roanna. Beautiful. Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Next, we'll go to Craig Billingham, a new colleague, and very, very pleased to welcome Craig here. He is also a lecturer in creative writing in the English and writing program at UNSW. He is a writer of poetry and of prose, has published 2 poetry collections, Storytelling and Public Transport, and other stories, reviews and essays in Australian literary journals, including Southerly, Heat, Meanjin and Island. He's read at the Sydney Writers' Festival, Melbourne Writers' Festival, and has mentored writers and delivered workshops for Varuna, the Writers' House, and at the Baranga Writers' Centre. Great pleasure to welcome Craig this morning. Thank you, Craig.
Thank you, Brigitta, and thank you to the other writers. It's I'm coming from Darug and Gundagura lands, unceded lands, which Evelyn's already referenced. I noticed that. It's always feel when I say that where I'm coming from in terms of the Aboriginal lands, when there are people such as Ellen and Evelyn on the panel, it makes me feel a little bit nervous even just saying that, because they speak so powerfully and so beautifully to that. And I know also Evelyn's poem about the acknowledgement and how can we possibly acknowledge those things? And so it is a conflicted thing that I say, and I say that with the utmost respect. And I love those readings. And I'm going to follow, I've been following Roanna a lot around the last few terms. And so I'm following her again today. I'm also going to follow her in the sense that I'm going to read an extract from a story. So it's called The Fence, and it's sort of that conflict about those little bits of the land that we take and claim as our own, and how particularly in Sydney with real estate and cost of living and housing and all of those sorts of things, it's this strange thing when you put that against what Ellen and Evelyn have been speaking so eloquently about. Anyway, The Fence. My mother says I take everything to heart. She says I've always been like that, and I don't feel like arguing. She goes inside to make a cup of tea. I'm at my parents' house in the Blue Mountains. I've offered to paint the front fence before they sell their home and move to an over 55s development on the mid-north coast, 20 minutes south of Newcastle, where there's a teaching hospital and winters are much warmer. They're moving because they're getting old. Mum's 71 and my stepfather 64. They're ready for a change. They don't know how long they've got. Mum has high blood pressure and rheumatoid arthritis, and 5 years ago she had a large melanoma removed from her right calf, plus some lymph nodes from her groin, a necessary precaution, the specialist said. She is supposed to wear compression stockings, but she does not. She takes a battery of pills each morning. She has regular scans and tests. It will take longer to paint the fence than I've planned for. It has a patchy covering of moss and mold, and the paint is flaking off from the majority of the pickets. I thought I would only need to paint the side that faces outwards to the street, but now I can see that I will have to paint the internal side as well. I've brought my pressure cleaner, which I've attached to the garden hose and plugged into an extension cord. It is simple and even fun to use. Not that I use it often, but first I will have to prune the roses. My mother calls out from the veranda. Tea's ready, she says. We will sit on the veranda in the autumn sun and drink our tea. She has baked. It would be a surprise had she not. It's a lemon drizzle cake, she says, with double drizzle. My slice is twice the size of hers. I go to the kitchen to wash my hands. The kitchen still looks new. It was expensive when they put it in 12 years ago, which was when they bought the house and moved up from the rental in Mona Vale. The house has doubled in value, and perhaps more than doubled. They will do well when they sell it. I'll have to prune the roses, I say, to get in close enough to paint. Mum says that she will do it. They're heirloom roses and they can be pruned aggressively, but you need to know what you're doing. She mentions eyes as with potatoes. I don't like the thought of that, I say. We drink our tea and eat our cake. It seems inevitable that we will return to the topic of our earlier conversation, which was about Stephanie, my daughter. She has not returned her grandparents' calls, nor visited them in several weeks. I should speak to her. I should tell her it isn't on. But instead of going back there, Mum mentions a photograph album I left behind some 30 years earlier for safekeeping while I travelled around Europe and lived for 2 years in London. Do I want it, she asks, or should she throw it out? I say I'll show Stephanie. She has a thing about the 90s. Mum fetches the album from the spare room. I flick through it and shake my head. Long hair and then a crew cut, Valerie's Pulsar and Tim's Corolla, the bottle bong in Byron, fractions, fragments. We'd need to outlive ourselves to think of them as whole. My stepfather calls from the butcher's. Mum puts him on speaker. Should he get a leg of lamb? Small one, Mum says, and don't forget the bacon. It disgusts me that eating meat does not disgust me. Stephanie is a vegan. Last week we argued about choice and necessity, about privilege and ignorance and cruelty, and I told her she was too young to be definitive. She went to her room and closed the door, punctured, deflated. My need to win is an ugly trait. Steph's 17. When she's at her mum's, I sing her praises. Rosie, my parents' 12-year-old golden retriever, limps over to nuzzle and lick my hands, which are sticky from the cake. I tell her she's a good girl, a sweet old thing, a beautiful golden heifer. And it seems to me she smiles and tells me to fuck off. Lily, the 5-year-old spaniel, is at Mum's feet. There are 5 chickens and a coop in the back garden and 2 15-year-old cats somewhere snoozing. Where my mother is, Life has always gathered round. I won't be long, my stepfather says. On the way back, he'll go to the hardware store to buy the paintbrushes and the paint. He and Mum confer again. Yes, Mum says, antique white. Speak for yourself, my stepfather says. Mum and I both laugh uncomfortably, and then she says goodbye. It's always like this. They've been married for 35 years. He has multifocal motor neuropathy, or MNN. He has always been clumsy, and now he is slightly more so. His arms and hands and legs and feet are slowly becoming weaker. It happens. It's happening to him. He insists on going to CrossFit 3 times a week, and once a month he drives 40 kilometers to Nepean Hospital to spend 2 hours on an intravenous drip. Sometimes he's dehydrated and it hurts to insert the catheter. He sleeps more than he used to. He hides it well, or thinks he does, not knowing that Mum awakens from her naps to find him napping. Come on then, Mum says, it won't paint itself. She carries our plates and mugs inside and then goes to the back garden to fetch her pruning shears from the shed. We meet at the front gate. The shears are serious looking things. I have her hands, which we inherited from her father, strong, broad, ill-defined. My ex-wife used to quip that my hands were made of plasticine, like a character from Wallace and Gromit. I asked Mum if she needs help to access the roses, but she says she'll be okay. She stays inside the fence and I go outside, dragging the pressure cleaner behind me, hoping the hose and extension cord will reach. We start our work at opposite ends of the fence, some 15 meters apart. The pressure cleaner is loud and powerful, and I need to concentrate to ensure I do not damage the timber. I stand a meter back from the fence and sweep the handgun up and down, cleaning one picket at a time. The moss and mold come off easily, as does the bubbled and flaking paint. The effect is instant, and the fence looks better already. It's gratifying work. It will not take long. I'm moving quickly in the direction of my mother. Her job is more difficult, requiring thought and skill and precision. She has to bend and crouch. When I reach the gate, which is positioned symmetrically at the midpoint of the fence, I turn off the cleaner and watch her for a moment. Her arms are swollen. She is not wearing gloves. She looks up and says, "Don't you dare." I smile and say, "I wouldn't." Mum stands up straight and holds her back. I ask if she wants me to prune the rest of the roses, but she says she needs a minute. She takes short steps from the garden bed across the front path, her hamstrings tight, another thing we have in common, and now she has reached the inside of the section of the fence that I've just cleaned, ready to go again. "Where's your dad?" she says. "Do you want me to call?" "No, he'll not be long." I turn on the pressure cleaner again and clean the remaining posts and pickets, and then I move to the inside of the fence to where Mum started. I work my way back to the gate, then I turn the pressure cleaner off. Mum is still pruning, removing dead wood, so I fetch the green bin from the side of the house and ask if she'd like me to clean up after her. "There are gloves in the shed," she says. I ask if she'd like some. "No, I can't wear them." I go to the shed and find a pair of leather gloves. They're too small, but I force them on. When I get back to the front garden, my stepfather has arrived. I help him unload the car, but not wishing to tread mud from the saturated garden into the house, I leave the bags at the door, from where he collects and carries them to the kitchen. On my last trip to the car, I retrieve the paintbrushes and the tin of paint. Will 4 liters be enough? I don't think so, not for 2 coats, but probably I'm mistaken. My stepfather was a house painter after finishing his degree before getting into computers. He knows best, or if not best, then better than me. I leave the tin and the paintbrushes on the veranda and go back to collecting the debris from Mum's pruning. "Nearly done," she says. I work slowly, avoiding puddles and thorns, not wanting to encroach on Mum's space. I look over as I rise from my haunches. How much time has she spent in this garden? Why did they invest in plants and shrubs and saplings and compost and gravel and sheds and coops and furniture for the veranda and the deck, in solar panels and water tanks, none of which they can take with them? The cost of living, the joy of being able to do so, the insistence on not spurning one's good fortune. Mum would not have had it any other way. Her first husband, my father, was unkind. This simple burgeoning is what she had always wanted. My stepfather emerges from the house. He's changed into a pair of shorts, paint-splattered joggers, and an unzipped fleece over a t-shirt that says, "Old fellas rule." He has a mullet of silver hair down to his shoulders, apparently in the style of Rod Stewart when he, Rod Stewart, was in the Faces. I'm thinning on top, but Mum says her father, my grandfather, did not go completely bald. Blood flow, my ex-wife suggested. She added rosemary oil to our shampoo. Have you not overdone it with the roses, my stepfather says. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit, and because of time, so apologies, I'll just quickly move down here. I finished cleaning up after Mum, and then I put the pressure cleaner in the boot of my car, call the extension cord into a figure 8, wind up and stow away the hose. It's 1 p.m. or shortly after. I leave my boots at the front door. I go inside to use the bathroom and wash my hands. I catch myself in the mirror. I am my mother's son. I stay out of the kitchen, out of the way, hovering in the dining room and the hallway. The dogs bark and I go to the back door to let them in. It's overcast now, but I don't think it's going to rain. We'll do the first coat after lunch and the second coat tomorrow, or the next day, or the next. I will miss them terribly when they're gone. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. We've been inhabiting space so differently over the last hour. Lovely. Thank you. And moving on now to our last writer, Fiona McFarlane. Joining us, as I said, from California. So thank you for making that kind of journey. Fiona is the author of The Night Guest, shortlisted for Miles Franklin and The High Places, which won the Dylan Thomas Prize. Her latest novel, The Stunning Sun Walks Down, and her short stories have been published in The New Yorker, in Best Australian Short Stories, and in Zoetrope All Story. The Sun Walks Down has been published in the US. I was looking at the accolades on the Farrar Straus and Giroux page for the book. Has had such wonderful responses, and I understand it's been longlisted for the Walter Scott Historical Fiction Prize. So that's all wonderful news. Fiona teaches at UC Berkeley, and it is wonderful to have you here. To welcome you home, I suppose. Thank you, Fiona.
Thank you, Brigitta. Thank you for welcoming me home. It is Michelle's fault that I live in California, so it seems appropriate that I should be speaking to you from yesterday afternoon. I'm speaking from Ohlone land in the San Francisco Bay Area, and it's an enormous privilege to be speaking alongside these other writers and to be speaking about Michelle, who, I mean, I feel it's an honor to be mentioned in the same sentence as Michelle and the same sentences as Michelle. And as others have said, she's a writer of not only extraordinary gifts we're so lucky to have, but also an incredibly generous mentor and friend to so many other Australian writers. And I feel as if I have been particularly blessed with Michelle's friendship. I'm about to go and hear the Mexican writer Valeria Luiselli give a lecture called Migration Stories, and it feels right somehow. It feels to fit with Michelle, who's a great writer of migration and migrations of all kinds and crossing borders of all kinds, not least of which is the migration from the world into language and all of the complications and confusions and beauties that come along with that. And I want to reiterate what Roanna said about Michelle's mastery of the sentence. I'm going to read two passages, one from Questions of Travel and one from a short story of mine called Mycenae. I've chosen these passages because they're both in part sort of moments of arrival. I suppose my passage is a moment of departure, and then Michelle's is a moment of arrival. It is a pleasure to place the two of them together. I wrote this story because I heard two older people in a gate at an airport admitting to each other that they were frightened of the holiday they were about to take. What a terrible thing at a time like this, to own a house and the trees around it. Janet sat rigid in her narrow seat. The plane lifted from the city and her house fell away, consumed by the other houses. Janet worried about her own particular garden and her emptied refrigerator and her lamps that had been timed to come on automatically at 6. Is 6 too early, too obviously a timer, do you think? Asked Murray. Janet was disturbed by this marital clairvoyance, and this was a new feeling, very recent. It had to do, she thought, with seeing the Andersons again. She took Murray's hand, and together the Dwyers leaned toward the small window and watched as the horizon lost authority. When the attendants came with trolleys, they would know they were safe, but until then they held hands as they tilted into the sky. During the flight, Janet allowed herself to remember her fear of the Andersons. She had forgotten this fear or placed it aside during the flurry of preparation. There had been an efficient period of to-do lists and of telling people coyly that they were meeting old friends in Greece. Now necessarily idle on the plane, Janet recalled the Andersons' sophistication, the decisiveness of their actions, which had always been without tremor or negotiation, the fact of their being American, which placed them at the center of the world. Suspended above the revolving deserts of the Middle East, she feared the Andersons, who were from good families, however that might be understood. This was clear because they used to mention expensive New England schools and exotic family holidays. Or Amy Anderson mentioned these things on behalf of herself and Eric with an air of begrudging tenderness, as if obliged to give up a shameful but pleasant secret. And this fascinated Janet, who'd grown up in an asbestos house owned by the Australian government. Murray would never say he feared the Andersons, though in his anxious way that's what he meant by, is 6 too early? And Janet worried about him coming into daily contact with a man like Eric Anderson, what that might do to her husband's self-esteem, given that Eric, since they'd met him, had gone on to an illustrious academic career, and Murray's contribution had been so small, though very solid. And to be seeing them again in Greece, of all countries, in an old place that mattered, among the ancient terrors of history. The best thing was to be afraid along with Murray, to retain that sense of unity. Later they could rally, once they'd been reassured by the goodness of Greek food and the number of people who spoke English. So Janet nurtured her fear over peanuts and warm washcloths and pressed her leg against Murray's, and together they watched the same in-flight movies and walked up and down the nighttime aisles of the plane in their compression socks, treading softly over the slipped blankets of the other passengers. In this way, they flew to Greece, as if that were an easy thing to do, to board a plane in Sydney, spend a few hours in Hong Kong and then London, and finally to arrive in Athens. They stepped out of the airport terminal and were surrounded by offers of help and information. They'd expected this and made their way to the official taxi rank with resolute faces. Murray held a piece of paper with the address of their apartment on it in Greek letters. He handed this over to the taxi driver, like a man entrusted with the delivery of a sacred object. The driver understood. The apartment was, it seemed, a real place in a real city. And now that we have arrived, then we shall hear, we'll hear from Michelle's questions of travel. I've chosen this section for so many reasons. I teach from this section because the writing is just so bloody good. And also because I know of no other writer who would have the wit or the eye to describe the conveyor belt of a baggage carousel as a melancholy rubber stream. So this is from one of the Laura sections in Questions of Travel. The last bag from the London flight was claimed in Naples, and Laura was left alone. The carousel looped past again, a melancholy rubber stream. She might have stayed there forever or taken the first flight back, but a uniformed figure approached. Officials spoke into walkie-talkies. Laura filled out forms. It was foolish, she was telling herself, to think in terms of signs. Then a panel in the wall slid open like magic. A man in overalls emerged. He handed Laura her case. It had been retrieved from the tarmac, where it had fallen unnoticed from a trailer. By the time the airport bus pulled in, Naples stood in a brownish benzene dusk. What had Laura expected? Arias, gunfire, the ghosts of centurions, perhaps, certainly her pocket explored by the expert hand. Circles of traffic tightened and hummed. Just a short walk, said the letter Vivian had sent with a map. But there were 2 men beside Laura, one offering a Discman, the other a mobile phone. She shook them off and began to make her way through the crowd. Between folding tables, on which were set out socks, homes, pocket knives, cheap, useful things. A shadow came whispering of hashish in a hotel. Laura walked faster, tried to look purposeful and knowing. An enormous square had been dug up and barriers erected around the excavations. She had to cross it, but how? An iron hand seized her arm. It had prevented her from stepping in front of a bus. Laura thanked, wanted to cry, fled into a narrow street. The evening had deepened. Large spots of rain came padding. A bouquet of umbrellas materialized, thrust at her by a dark man. There were few streetlights and no pavement. She put up the hood of her jacket. A cat cried thinly under a parked car. The rain slanted and steadied. Laura's shoes were sodden, then her feet. Her wheeled case lurched over flagstones, always one heavy step behind, a club-footed stalker from an evil dream. A shining electric eye flew straight at her. She flattened herself against hard-hearted stone. The Vespa sped past, spraying laughter. Then there was a shrine enclosing a rouged and solid infant, a trashy brooch pinned to a wet black facade. Its neon illuminated the name of a piazza that Laura spent minutes failing to find on her map. She went on past the sound of someone coughing. There was always another square or another crossroad. There was always a scooter coming fast out of the dark. A photograph of Sophia Loren adorned the window of a pizzeria. To enter would require courage because the restaurant was crowded and Laura was wet. She trudged on and came to a door flush with the street that swung noiselessly back. There was fragrance and guilt, a seraglio or a church. Laura turned a corner and before her, like a vision, a flight of shallow steps led to an archway surmounted by a bell. She knew that she was lost. She knew that she loved this place. Thank you. And thank you, Michelle.
And thank you, Fiona. Thank you for taking us to Naples too, just now. That's full of excitement. I think I'm there. So beautiful. Thank you. And thank you all. We've been immersed over the last hour in journeys and houses and bodies, such different experiences and sentences in such diverse ways, sentences and lines, such a gift. And, you know, I'll just join you all in offering all that back to Michelle, who's just thanked everyone in the chat. Yes, she wants Brigitta's dog brooch. She always wants Brigitta's dog brooch. I'm wearing it today. Again, yesterday I wore it to honour you, Michelle, today to taunt. Here we go, little doggy brooch from Armidale, in fact, you know, so it travelled. Thank you. We are so honoured to have such wonderful, wonderful writers, such a privilege, such a gift. I should have said at the start that the panel is an ASAL writers panel at an ASAL conference, and it's made possible by funding from the Copyright Agency, Cultural Fund, and so we're, you know, appreciative of that. It's so important to support writers in the tiny ways that we do in this country. So my respects, my thanks, and all good wishes. And there's some lovely things in the chat. Please take a minute to read those. But I'll ask you all to just join me again to thank and applaud these wonderful writers here today.